Delighted to welcome back on the show. Always a pleasure. He's all the way over there in Montreal, coming off a really impressive performance and victory against Reza Madadi at UFC London. Currently out of contract with the UFC. It is Mr. Joseph Duffy. Joseph, how are you, my friend? What's happening?
I'm good, Niall. How's things?
Good, yeah, not too bad. You're in great form, Mr. Duffy. We had some great chats there off the air before we came on. In good spirits. Before we get to the contract situation, I just want to ask you about, because obviously you didn't do any interviews, you hurt your foot, you had to go to hospital after UFC London, and there hasn't been really many updates from you, so I thought we'd get you back on this week to talk about what's going on. First of all, the performance against Reza, I thought was very good. You look pretty sharp, lots of combinations, lots of good kicks. How did you assess the performance against Reza?
Yeah, it was. I think without getting a stoppage, it was probably as good as we could have hoped. I definitely there's lots of areas to look at. After assessing, I watched the fight quite a few times,
Yeah.
and there's lots of stuff I want to look at, but definitely it's an improvement definitely on the Poirier fight. Obviously, the takedown side of things, so there's positives to look at, but a few negatives also. So. All in all, it was a decent performance, and mainly I got the win. That was a priority in this one was to get that win.
Where did you feel the negatives came in the performance against Reza?
I felt like after I would put together a nice combo, but then I felt like I didn't keep the pressure on enough. Like I didn't, I don't know. It's like sometimes I would take a nice angle, but then I would let him off the hook a little bit. When
Okay.
I should have stepped on him a little bit more, just a bit more pressure. That was definitely one of the things I was looking at. And then some of the other things were just technical issues, just felt like I was getting a little bit tall on the way back and stuff like that. So, that's things that I was working on today,
Yeah.
and just basic stuff, that needs adjusting. Obviously, from fight to fight, when you're working on new stuff, then sometimes some of the old stuff starts to slip a little bit. So just old stuff to recap over, but it's good. Keeps me honest, that's for sure.
Definitely. I'm going to ask you, obviously, the contact with the UFC. I think there's roughly about 2 months left. The 90-day matching period's on at the moment. Has Graham heard anything from the UFC? Has been any conversation since the Reza Madadi fight?
I don't think so. I don't think he's heard too much. I think maybe him and Sean probably sat down after the fight. Maybe a little bit of discussion. But since as far as I'm aware, there's been no other contacts. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure the situation at the minute. Or I think maybe we just sit tight and wait for an offer, or maybe they're waiting for the 90 days to be over, and then look at what offers come in, and then see if they want to match. Maybe that's the case.
So Graham and Sean had a conversation in London.
I think they were chatting, but to be honest, it was that soon after the fight that I hadn't really thought much about after exactly what we're looking at. All I was thinking about was the fight, and I didn't look past that. So I know they were trying to talk figures and everything else, but at that stage, figures hadn't even entered my head. All I was thinking about was trying to beat Reza on the night, and that was as far as I looked, really. I don't tend to, I don't like looking past the fights.
Yeah.
So, that's one of the things I find hard with the UFC. They kind of after the fight, they want you calling out people and this type of thing. They always ask the question, who's next? But for me, personally, I feel that if I got someone in mind, then I haven't got my focus 100% on the person in front of me, and I feel whenever I haven't got the focus on that, then I come unstuck. So it's something just from a personal point of view that I like to keep. I like to keep 100% focus on the task at hand.
Do you feel maybe then, saying that under the new ownership, under WME, IMG, that there's even more emphasis now on sort of an entertainment factor than ever before in order to sell these fights?
I think it's hard to gauge at the minute because they've only, it's not even a year yet. So it's hard to gauge exactly what their plan of attack is. But I definitely feel in the last few years it seems to be going down that route a little bit too much. You know, all the bad blood and all the talk and all the mad stuff with the weigh-ins, all the shit, and then when they get in there, they stand in front of each other, looking at each other. They're not getting stuck in. So I feel the emphasis on the fights and on the actual martial arts has been lost. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
probably the last couple of years.
You're in very good form, Joseph. We were having a good laugh there before, and I've been texting you over the last couple of weeks. How are you? How are you upstairs about the whole contract situation? Are you disappointed there hasn't been any initial contact really straight off the bat? How are the spirits in relation to your fighting career?
Um, yeah, pretty good, pretty good. I think I'm excited to go into the next stage, and I feel like this last 2 years has been a period that I've been trying to improve. I've been trying to get my level back up to scratch. Obviously, the time boxing was a positive, but it was also a negative. It was a time where I fell behind on my grappling. Wrestling always needed lots of work. So I've been using this time to try and get my level up, and I haven't been as active as I would have liked.
Yeah.
So I definitely feel like my level's getting there now. Obviously, there's always things to work on, but I'm at the stage now where I want to be a bit more active. And obviously, the whole contract thing, you can either let it do you nothing or you can just get on with it. So I'm like I enjoy training, so it's not like I only turn up to the gym when I got a fight. So that's not really an issue. Like I said before, I'm pretty lucky. I get to do what I love. So yeah, life's good. Can't complain. It'll be better now when the contract gets sorted, and I'm looking forward to being a bit more active now in the next few years.
Is there anything you can do, at the moment? You're a guy who's obviously you've pro boxed before. There's these submission underground events that are taking place quite regularly. We've seen John Jones compete in them. Chad Mendez. The list goes on. Don Henderson. Is that something maybe you consider doing on your downtime?
100%. It's something I've been thinking about since the fight. Is like I remember when I was a teenager, when I was younger, like I was constantly competing. It was always, pretty much every weekend I'd be competing in maybe a kickboxing competition, a grappling event, jiu-jitsu kumite. I'd be doing something all the time, and it's something I would like to do now. I'd like to get some grappling in the meantime when this stuff's going on. Um, I feel like every time you compete, you're improving, and it brings your mind to a different level. Where you're active, and you get to a state where you feel like you're unbeatable almost when you're
Yeah.
competing that often. It just becomes like walking, talking, and breathing. Same as driving a car. When at first you're nervous, once you get used to it, you don't even have to think, and that's kind of how I used to look at fighting. I was competing every weekend, and I felt like my level when when you look at like some of the grapplers now on the grappling scene, the likes of Gordon Ryan, a lot of the guys from the gym, we got Oliver Taza, Ethan. We got these guys who's competing pretty much every other week, and they've only been grappling maybe 2-3 years, and they're at that world class level already. Um, I think that says a lot about how important it is to compete and compete regular.
Has there been any contact? Have you made any efforts maybe to reach out to these promotions, such as obviously Submission Underground, you've Eddie Bravo, things like that? Has there been any contact between you and those guys?
No, no, I haven't spoke to any of them guys. There's actually a show that was being run here in Montreal that I was interested in competing in, but all the jiu-jitsu stuff and amateur MMA, there's like most of the sport that isn't under Sport Canada has been shut down here. So like
Okay.
at the minute, there's no BJJ events, there's no grappling events. So that's a bit of a shame for the province here. So like the show I had in mind, it was MTL Invitational. They've been running like kind of like the EBI format, and that's what I was thinking about competing on. But sadly, it's all been shut down at the minute, so that kind of put a spanner in the works. But I spoke to Taza the other day, and he said, any of the events that he's doing, he'll let me in. He'll let me know, and obviously, if I'm interested, then I'll give him a shout.
You intend on doing it though, yeah?
Yeah, that's it. I'm excited about competing. I think that's what I'm excited for when I get back into MMA as well. Sometimes we build these fights to be like every fight is the be all and the end all, but it's not that. Each time we fight, we compete, we learn. It's not like if you lose a fight, it's not the end of the world. It's just you drop a fight, you get back in, you correct the mistakes, you learn, you move forward. It's not the end of the world.
What do you think of this? Obviously, I should have thought about this the other day, and everyone's coming out with it in the world of martial arts. And you've Jimmy Manoa coming out saying he wants to fight David Haye. You've obviously the whole talk with Conor and Floyd. I don't even want to get into that. You have Artem Lobov, I think, said he wanted to fight. I don't know who it was, Paulie Malignaggi or Cub Swanson, something like that. Whatever it is, anyway. But do you not think it makes sense if this was going to happen? Would you be interested in having a go if you were to re-sign with the UFC? You being a former pro boxer, would you?
What's that?
Would you like to throw down against a boxer?
Yeah.
on a card like that?
Why not? To be a bit of crack.
What's your thoughts on all this though, Joe, as well? Because you are a pro you were obviously 8-0 pro boxer. Do you think it's good for the sport? For mixed martial arts?
I think anything that brings eyes to the sport is good. Like they say, there's no such thing as bad press.
Yeah, of course.
I suppose it's the same thing, if these guys, fair play to them, they're interested in going over, and it takes balls to do that. I think it'll maybe even draw new fans to sport. Maybe the boxing fans will see the characters that's coming over to compete in boxing, and they might be drawn to them characters, and then they might become fans of both sports. So, from that point of view, you can't really lose, but if you're competing with a boxer in their environment, then most of the time they should be winning them fights. That's their sport. It's not the same sport. It's from competing in the two, they're very different sports.
Yeah, 100%. We look at obviously if things don't work out with the UFC, we've talked about this before. Bellator are going to be, I'm sure they're already trying to knock on your door. What's your thoughts about that? Obviously, there's no USADA testing. Would that be a big negative drawback for you?
Yeah, I think that's one of the main positives to competing in the UFC is USADA. USADA for anyone who's competing clean, that's a huge thing. That was a big move forward in the first place when UFC brought them in. But it's not the only. It's not the only the only factor you can take into account really when you're talking about who you're going to sign with next. So, I suppose it's interesting to see what deals are on the table, what the UFC are offering, what these other promotions are offering, and you got to kind of weigh up the pros and cons.
Have you heard of any contacts from other promotions?
No, that's with the 90 days,
they can't really do anything. Yeah,
they can't do anything until after that period's over. So,
do you think maybe the UFC are trying to play with you, maybe force your hand to maybe sign the deal in the next 2 months, because that's sort of what they've been tending to do, guys. We saw the Lawrence Larkin offer. They gave Lawrence Larkin an offer, I think, with a week or two to go on his deal. Obviously, that didn't work out. He went to Bellator. Do you think this is going to go right down to the wire?
I expect it to. I think that's the whole point of this being put in place. But I don't know what the tactic is behind it. It doesn't really make much sense to me whether they think after 3 months you're going to be tight for money, and you're going to be you're going to be pushing to get a fight and in a rush to sign a deal. That's obviously that's not going to work for me. In between the last few fights, I've been going 6-8 months just to try and work on my game. So 3 months isn't exactly a big
Yeah.
deal. Um, so I'm not sure on what the tactic is, but I'm preparing for the 3 months and go from there.
What's your gut feeling, Joseph?
Um, if I'm honest, I feel like I don't feel like the interest is there from the UFC at the minute. Um,
Why?
like a number of things really. Like a fight week, I think. Like you always know, they push fighters. They push fighters. Um, I think bonuses is a big factor. Um, like I find it very hard. Like them 50G bonuses, I've only had one, but like every time I fought, I've gone for them bonuses. And there's times where I felt, I could have got them. The Mitch Clark one, I felt was
100%.
deserved the bonus. Um, but for some reason, like it's not easy to pick up them bonuses. Even locker room bonuses, like uh, this fight, I haven't received no locker room bonuses. Like Christmas time, they were ringing up fighters. They were giving out bonuses. Well, they were saying they were giving out bonuses, but it was only guys who fought that got bonuses. I didn't receive no bonuses. So I don't know. I think if they're trying to keep you sweet, then obviously they would throw you a few pound or whatever. But obviously, in my case, they're not too bothered. So neither am I.
Do you feel underappreciated then? Obviously, because I think it'd be criminal if they let you go, especially. You're a guy. Obviously, you can sell the whole thing that'll happen in the past. You can, there's not very many Irish-born fighters in the UFC at the moment, and I think the market here is still massive. I think they'd be dropping a big ball if they were to let you go. Do you feel that way as well? Maybe that you're underappreciated your skills as a martial artist compared to your mate.
I think I just think that maybe they're going too far in the other direction.
Yeah.
They're looking for the guys who's mad on social media, looking for the guys who's like talking big instead of going in there and putting on performances, putting on exciting fights, and looking to finish. I think in that sense I feel underappreciated, but there's probably many other fighters who are in the same position. So it's no big deal. Like I said is you can't take this stuff personal.
Yeah.
To them it's business, and to us it's got to be business too. If you take it all too personal, then I think you're making a bit of a mistake mentally. Really, you just gotta I think leave it all play out, and then based on how it all plays out, uh, helps you make your decisions
Yeah.
from there.
Do you think there's ever, you said, it's not personal there. Do you ever think there's going to be a point where you're going to have to go, if you do re-sign, maybe start talking a bit of smack or, tweeting out crap like that, like a lot of fighters do in order to sell fights, create interests?
Um, Maybe I don't know is the truth. I don't know. Maybe. I think the problem is it's not like if it's not real, people see straight through it.
Yeah, of course.
And like I remember Dana saying at one of the press conferences before is like what he loves about the sport is the different characters. So if everyone becomes the same, then it's kind of like price elasticity. Then we got all the same.
Yeah.
So then it devalues it. So like it's good to have these different characters, and that's like I'm just kind of being myself because like I don't really know how to be anything else, So
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think we've seen it a little bit with Gegard and Musasi as well lately. He knew he was coming up to the last fight in his deal, so he started, being maybe forcing himself with the media a little bit more is what Gegard's done in order to get, the deal that he wants. And, hopefully they'd be mad not to re-sign you. Another thing I want to ask you, is there any chance you'd ever, you'd move, maybe to kickboxing, something like that? There's obviously a lot of options out there in relation to that as well. As we mentioned, the BJJ, everything else that goes on, the other competitions. Would that something that interests you down the line? Because we've seen your kicks and they're pretty spectacular.
yeah, without a doubt. Like I competed in kickboxing,
Yeah.
I had a few full contact kickboxing. Obviously the boxing.
Does it give you the same pleasure as mixed martial arts though?
I wouldn't say it gives me the same pleasure.
Okay.
But it's that long since I've done it that, I suppose it's a different challenge. And as a fighter, I think that's what we're chasing all the time, is just challenges.
Yeah.
So maybe when if that's an option, competing in that also, then who knows? Why not? The boxing obviously is going to help in that area, and it can only improve my striking again. Why not? If it helps me keep active as well, definitely something I'd be interested in.
Looking at obviously the next 2 months, Joseph, we're obviously going to find out in whatever it is, 8 weeks. I'm not sure even the official timeline. Obviously, you hope to be around in the UFC. Hopefully, something can get worked out. Is there anyone you have your eyes on? Anyone you go, oh, that's a nice match. I'd like to throw down possibly against him.
There's a lot of fighters actually, like especially in the top 15. There's a lot of tough fights there, and I just feel from a personal point of view, it'd be good to test myself against them, like the likes of Khabib, the likes of Tony Ferguson. These guys are, they're beasts. They're beasts. Every time they go into fight, they put on great performances, and technically, I'd love to challenge myself against them. I would like to see, I'd like to find a way to beat them. There's loads of fights. Chiesa, he's as tough as they come.
Yeah, definitely.
Great ground game. Like when you're fighting guys who's that tough, it's a different challenge also. It gives you a satisfaction because this guy's not going to quit in there. Diaz, look at Diaz. Every time he goes in there is a war. I always thought that'd be an exciting fight. He's got good boxing too, so would have been an exciting fight. There's loads of fights there that I'm excited, and like I said, it would be a good challenge. All of them would be a good challenge. So
definitely, we'll see Joe on International Fight Week yet. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Anyway, something gets word out. GSP's back in the gym as well. I have to mention that to you. Obviously, he hasn't really left the gym ever, but that fight's been announced against Michael Bisping. Just your thoughts on that before we let you go, mate.
Yeah, it's a great fight. I think it's obviously it's a good clash of personalities, which is always good. Easy to sell, and it's interesting because the weight is a factor. I think anyone who doubts Bisping is crazy because, like, he's proved everyone wrong a million times, myself included. So I'm a big fan of Bisping also. I think it's a great fight. Obviously, I'm leaning towards George because, like, I train with George. I've seen what he can do, and obviously, growing up, he was one of my favorite too. So I'm leaning towards George, but I don't like. I hear people say it's, like anyone who says George is looking for an easy fight or any of this is crazy. Anyone who's
I completely agree.
What's like Bisping's career? They're crazy. Anyone who writes him off is, they need their head screwed back on.
100% agree, Mr. Duffy. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. I hope everything gets resolved. With your contract situation and everything, you get the deal you want. Do appreciate your honesty and always appreciate the time. Always a pleasure, my friend.
Cheers, Dan. Thanks for having me on.